So one of the things that made early mankind successful, human pockets of people kind of grew up and then died out in all over certain parts of Africa because they were eaten, killed, all kinds of bad stuff happened to them. So they would grow up, there would be a community of 100 of them, and they would die off because they didn't have the use of tools. But eventually mankind figures out that they can use tools and other animals cannot. So they are able to use these tools in order to build things, kill animals. All right? So different things that they did, and you kind of see here, you've got different stone tools that they start using. The reason why we call it the Stone Age is because mankind used stone tools. All right, they had knives, they had axes, all different kinds of stuff. Rubbing stones to smooth out sticks, all kinds of stuff that they used to make different tools. And so we got better and better and better at using tools, spears, bows, and arrows. All right, all come out of this period, and it's all made with stone. Another thing that happens is that mankind, about 700,000 years ago to 500,000 years ago, we're not real sure, figures out how to make and keep fire. You start using fire. First off, it allowed them to survive a lot longer because they could cook their food. Eating raw meat, not always the safest thing. Eating raw anything for us is not always super safe. So, a lot of them died from foodborne poisons, illnesses. If an animal had a disease in its blood and you ate it because it wasn't cooked, you died. So they weren't living long. There were, again, small pockets of humans, but they couldn't survive in big numbers because they didn't have the ability to go anywhere, cook their food. But now we can create fire, which does a lot of different stuff for humans. Not only does it allow me to cook my food, it allows me to get rid of pesky animals. And wild animals were a huge problem for early humans. Basically, any wild cat could kill a human like that. But they were terrified of fire. Wild dogs, same thing. Wolves, they could pack on humans. Again, they were terrified of fire. So they would stay away if you had a fire lit. Not only that, the number one killer of all humans, which is not a big, large animal, it's actually a really small one, tiny one, kind of went away with the smoke. Those are mosquitoes. So they carry diseases that killed humans. So that you could get rid of a lot of these things with your fire. Not only that, it allowed you to stay warm. And this was huge. This allowed early mankind to leave Africa. Africa, pretty much warm all year. You didn't have to go anywhere when you didn't have to have a great shelter or to keep warm at night because you could survive the temperatures. But if you wanted to survive the temperatures in Europe, where they migrated to, you needed fire. Because if you didn't have fire, you would freeze to death in the winter. So in order to migrate all around the world, we had to harness this fire in order to live. All right, and you kind of see there, the shelters, their fires. So this allows humans to basically go all over the earth. And once we discovered fire, we start seeing humankind in other places besides Africa, in Europe, and in Russia, and in Asia. So early humans start to develop culture, a way of living, all right? It basically makes up your way of life. And their culture was based on hunting and gathering. This idea that the men would go out and they would hunt and they would kill the animals, and the women would gather berries and pick things that they found that they knew were edible. Obviously, this was a trial and error process. And again, a lot of people died because they ate things they shouldn't. All right? Stone Age hunter-gatherers lived in small groups or bands. They were usually family groups. You did not have a giant civilization. You didn't have hundreds of people moving into new areas. You had a group of maybe 10 adults and their kids. And then they would hunt. You did not want a big group because it was harder to feed larger groups. The more you had to kill and gather. And if you went into an area that didn't have enough food, people starved to death. So they figured that out and realized they can only live with just enough people for protection, but not enough that you had to get so much food that if you didn't get that amount of food, they would die. So they were nomadic. They would go into one area and they would wander around. They'd take their tents or they'd take just their weapons sometimes, not even necessarily tents. They'd take their shelters if they had them. They were portable, and they would go from one area, kill all the animals, eat all the nuts and berries, and then move to the next. So they never really had the opportunity to sit down, write anything down, develop language. We never really progressed during the hunter-gatherer phase of our existence because most of our life was dedicated to eating. Every day you got up, like your only thing was, I gotta eat today. Let's find stuff to eat. Let's not starve to death. Every single day was don't starve. Like that was your whole goal, your whole life, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. There wasn't time for celebrations. There wasn't time to invent new science or make new technology. It was every single day of your life was don't die of starvation. Go find food and water. Go find food and water. Every single day, sun up to sundown. So that's what they did. And that's it for today.